The airport was busy and loud. People were running to their gates. Some were talking on the phone, others dragging big bags behind them. But one family stood quietly in line at gate 17. A black man, his wife, and their small daughter. The father's name was Marcus Johnson. He looked calm, but his eyes were sharp. He wore a simple jacket and jeans. His wife Angela held their daughter's hand. The little girl Zara looked excited. It was her first flight. "Daddy, do clouds feel soft?" Zara asked. Marcus smiled and said, "You'll find out soon, baby." They handed their boarding passes to the flight attendant and walked toward the plane. The flight was heading from Houston to New York. A long journey, about 3.5 hours. As they stepped onto the plane, Marcus noticed a man sitting in first class. The man wore a suit and gold watch. He had white hair and a proud face. He looked at Marcus and frowned. Angela whispered, "Ignore him." They kept walking. Suddenly the man called out, "Excuse me, I think someone's lost." Everyone turned to look. The man pointed at Marcus. "You're in the wrong section. This is first class." Marcus looked at his ticket. "Seat 3A is our seat." The man's face turned red. "You people don't belong here," he said loudly. "This is a place for professionals." "Not, sir, please," a flight attendant said, rushing over. "I paid good money for peace and quiet," the man snapped. "And now I have to sit next to this." Angela held Zara tighter. The little girl looked confused. "Mama, why is he mad?" Marcus stayed calm. "We have the right ticket. We're not moving." The flight attendant looked nervous. She didn't want a scene. "Sir," she said to the man, "please lower your voice. Everyone is welcome here." "But," the man stood up, "I want to speak to the captain. These people shouldn't be in first class. They're making me uncomfortable." Other passengers began to watch. Some whispered, some pulled out phones. Marcus looked at Angela. "Do you want to go back to economy?" Angela shook her head. "No, we earned this. Let's stay." The flight attendant spoke again. "Sir, please take your seat or we can delay the flight." He sat down but kept mumbling. "This is a joke. What kind of airline allows this?" Marcus took his seat next to the man. Angela and Zara sat beside him. The air felt heavy. The man kept giving them dirty looks. As the plane started to move, Zara looked out the window and smiled. "We're flying, Daddy." Marcus smiled back, but his heart was heavy. He had dealt with racism before, in stores, in meetings, even in school. But seeing it happen in front of his daughter hurt more than anything. He wanted to speak. He wanted to stand up and tell the man who he really was. But he waited. 30 minutes into the flight, the seatbelt sign turned off. A flight attendant offered drinks. The man next to Marcus said loudly, "I hope no one back there steals anything." Marcus took a deep breath. "Is there a reason you keep talking like this?" The man looked at him and said, "I just don't want trouble on this flight." "No one's causing trouble," Marcus said. "Except you." The man leaned back. "I've seen your kind, always pretending to be something you're not." Marcus's eyes turned cold. "You don't know anything about me." The man laughed. "Oh, I know enough. You probably work in a garage or something." Angela turned sharply. "Excuse me." Marcus put his hand on her arm. "Let it go," he whispered. But inside, something was building. Not anger, something stronger. Patience, control, and a deep plan. Zara opened a coloring book and started drawing. She was trying to ignore the tension. She asked, "Daddy, what does your kind mean?" Marcus paused. He looked at her little face. "It means some people forget we're all human," he said softly. A woman sitting behind them was recording on her phone. She had seen the whole thing. She whispered to her husband, "This is wrong. That man's disgusting." The flight crew had noticed too. One attendant walked over to Marcus and whispered, "We're really sorry. Sir, we're watching the situation. Please let us know if you need anything." Marcus nodded politely. "Thank you." The racist man picked up a newspaper and pretended to read, but he kept glancing at Marcus. "Mark my words," he muttered. "People like you bring problems." Marcus finally turned to him and said, "What is your name? Why do you care?" "I like to know the names of people who test my patience." The man looked confused. Marcus leaned in and said, quietly but firmly, "You think you're better than me because of your skin? But if you knew who I was, you'd be quiet right now." "Oh, yeah," the man laughed. "And who are you?" Marcus smiled slightly. "You'll find out before this plane lands." The man scoffed. "Big talk." Marcus looked out the window. The clouds were glowing orange as the sun began to set. He reached into his bag and pulled out a folder. Angela looked at it and smiled. The logo on the folder read, "Federal Civil Aviation Oversight Board," but he didn't show it to the man. Not yet. He wanted to wait. Wait for the right moment. Because some people only understand karma when it's thousands of feet in the air. The plane moved smoothly through the clouds, but inside Marcus, memories were stirring like a storm. He looked at his daughter, now peacefully drawing in her coloring book. He looked at Angela, who was reading a magazine but still tense. He looked at the man beside him, rude, loud, proud, still muttering now and then. Marcus turned his eyes to the window and began thinking, not about the flight, but about where he came from. Marcus grew up in a small town in Georgia. His house had thin walls, a broken roof, and floors that creaked with every step. His father worked as a janitor in a school. His His mother cleaned houses. They didn't have much, but they had rules. Be kind, be strong, be better than hate. He remembered his first day at school. He was 6 years old. His teacher told him to sit in the back of the class. When he asked why, she just said, "It's better this way." Marcus learned quickly, not just reading and math, but how people look at skin first, not heart. At 15, he was stopped by police while riding his bike home. They asked where he got it. He said, "My parents bought it." They didn't believe him. They made him sit on the curb for an hour before letting him go. That night, he promised himself something. One day they'll have to respect me, not because I shout, but because I rise. He started studying harder. While other kids played outside, he read books about laws, history, and human rights. He watched court shows instead of cartoons. He knew he wanted justice. By 22, Marcus had a law degree. By 28, he had his own office. By 32, he was helping people like him, people who were silenced, ignored, or mistreated. He didn't just win cases, he changed lives. He forced racist landlords to return homes. He defended innocent men blamed for crimes. He trained young black lawyers to stand strong. That's when the Federal Civil Aviation Oversight Board noticed him. They had seen his speeches, read his articles. They asked him to join to help make air travel fair for all races, ages, and backgrounds. Marcus said yes, not for money. For purpose. Back on the plane, Marcus opened that same folder. Inside were reports he was reviewing as part of his role. Yes, he was a passenger, but he was also one of the top legal advisors in national air safety and policy. The man beside him had no idea. He thought Marcus was just another black man sitting in his first class. Angela leaned toward Marcus and whispered, "You okay?" Marcus nodded. "Just thinking." She gave him a gentle look. "You always hold everything in." He smiled. "Not everything, just enough to stay focused." Zara looked up. "What are you thinking about, Daddy?" He looked at her and said, "I'm thinking about where I started, and how far we've come." Zara tilted her head, "Like a plane." Marcus laughed softly. "Yes, exactly like a plane." Meanwhile, the racist man pulled out his phone. He started texting someone angrily. "These people are making this flight horrible," he typed. "They look like trouble. Why are they even in first class?" But a woman behind him saw his screen. She'd had enough. "Excuse me," she said. "Can I ask you something?" He turned. "What? Do you realize how rude you're being? These people haven't done a single thing to you." He scoffed. "Mind your business," she said. "It became my business when your hate made this cabin uncomfortable for everyone." The man rolled his eyes. "This country's too sensitive. Now can't even speak the truth." Another passenger spoke up, then another. The cabin began to shift. People were no longer quiet. They were watching him now, not Marcus. The flight attendant returned. "She looked nervous, sir," she said. To Marcus, "I just want to say again, we're truly sorry." Marcus stood up, walked with her toward the galley, and whispered something. She nodded, surprised. He returned to his seat calmly. Angela looked at him. "What did you tell her?" Marcus said, "I asked her to let the captain know who I am. Not to get revenge, just to document this in case it happens again." Angela nodded. She knew Marcus never used power to show off, only to protect. A soft voice came from across the aisle. It was an older man, maybe in his 70s, wearing glasses. He looked at Marcus and said, "Son, I saw everything. You handled it well." "Thank you, sir," Marcus replied. The man smiled. "You remind me of how far we've come, and how far we still need to go." Zara smiled at the old man. "We're flying really high right now." The man chuckled. "Yes, little one, but your family's flying even higher." The racist man was silent now. He sensed the change. The people around him no longer agreed with him. The crew no longer smiled at him, and the man he tried to insult was respected by everyone. Still, he had no idea what was coming next. He didn't know that karma travels fast at 30,000 feet. As the plane flew high above the clouds, the air inside first class was quiet, but it wasn't peaceful. The man sitting beside Marcus stared straight ahead, his jaw tight. He was angry, embarrassed, and confused, but most of all, he felt afraid. Why were people suddenly turning against him? Why did the flight attendants stop smiling at him? He didn't know who Marcus really was. He didn't care to ask. All he knew was that the man next to him, a black man, made him feel small without saying much at all. But to understand why this man acted the way he did, we need to go back in time. His name was Richard Grant. He was born into a wealthy family. In Chicago, his father owned a chain of car dealerships. His mother came from old money. They lived in a large house with 10 rooms, a swimming pool, and a maid who cleaned every corner. As a child, Richard was told he was special. He went to private schools, where almost all the students looked like him, white, rich, privileged. At dinner, he often heard his father say things like, "Those people just don't work hard enough. They take and take, but never give back. They don't belong in places like this." Richard believed everything his father said. When he was 18, Richard got into college not because of good grades, but because his father donated money to the school there. He had a black roommate for the first time. He never said it out loud, but he hated it. He made rude jokes. He told the guy to keep his loud music down. He even told others. I don't feel safe with him around. One day, that roommate moved out. Richard felt proud. He thought, I protected my space. Years later, he worked for a company. As a manager, one day, a young black employee named Darren spoke up in a meeting. He had a better idea than Richard. Instead of praising Darren, Richard called his idea too risky. Then, behind closed doors, he told the boss, he's aggressive, not a team player. 2 weeks later, Darren was transferred. Richard felt powerful again. But slowly, things began to change. The world around Richard started noticing injustice. More companies hired people of color. More voices were speaking up. People began to fight back. Richard didn't like it. He lost his job when a younger, smarter, and more inclusive leader replaced him. He didn't say it aloud, but in his heart, he blamed it on diversity. He was bitter, angry, alone. Now, here he was on a flight to New York for a job interview, trying to act like the powerful man he once was. And yet, a simple family in first class had shaken his pride. He looked at Marcus, sitting calmly beside him, his voice lowered. You think you're better than me, don't you? Marcus didn't respond. He kept reading his folder. Richard continued, you people think you've earned your place, but it was given to you, all of it. Marcus finally spoke. Is that what you believe? I know it. Marcus looked at him, his voice calm. Then I feel sorry for you. Richard scoffed. Don't pretend to be noble. Marcus turned. To him, I don't need to pretend. You just don't know who I am. Behind them, the woman who was filming earlier was still recording. Her video now had signal, and it was slowly uploading online. In row 5, 2 teenagers were watching it already on social media. One whispered, this is going viral. In row 4, the man with glasses from earlier shook his head. Another proud man brought down by his own hate. Richard stood up and walked to the restroom. He splashed cold water on his face. Why do people hate me? He thought. I'm just being honest. I didn't do anything wrong. But deep inside, he knew the truth. He had built his whole life on a lie that he was better than others just because of his skin, his wealth, and his background. And now, that lie was crashing down at 30,000 feet. Back at his seat, Marcus looked out the window. Angela gently touched his arm. You okay? She asked. Yes, Marcus said. I just keep wondering, how many more people are like him? Angela said softly. Too many, but not forever. Zara looked up. Why is that man so mean, Mommy? Angela smiled at her gently. Because he doesn't understand love yet. Richard returned and sat down. This time, he was quiet. He noticed how no one around him made eye contact anymore. He wasn't the strong, respected businessman he thought he was. He was just a man, exposed. He tried to sleep, but something kept him awake. A growing fear that the world no longer accepted who he was pretending to be. Then something unexpected happened. The flight attendant returned to Marcus and whispered, Captain would like to speak with you for a moment. Marcus stood up. Everyone's eyes followed him as he walked to the front. Richard sat frozen. Why would the captain want to talk to him? The same question echoed across first class. Passengers leaned forward. Phones came out again. Whispers filled the air. Who is he? What's happening? Is he someone important? Richard felt a chill go down his spine. For the first time, he didn't feel powerful. He felt small, because karma doesn't knock before it enters. It flies quietly, beside you until it's time to land. And for Richard Grant, his landing was going to be rough. The plane was now halfway to New York. The clouds outside were glowing white and gold, but inside the cabin, the air felt tight. Passengers whispered. Some watched videos on their phones. Some quietly filmed the events unfolding. The rude man Richard Grant was no longer talking. He sat still, looking out the window, but his face was pale. His hands were shaking slightly. He had just seen Marcus walk to the front of the plane at the captain's request. Why would the captain call him? Richard thought again and again. Who is he? Why does he get this attention? But Richard still didn't know the full truth. He didn't know that the man he had insulted, the one sitting quietly with his family, wasn't just a calm father. Marcus was a top advisor for the Federal Civil Aviation Oversight Board, a man with real power in the skies. In the front of the plane, the captain stood outside the cockpit and shook Marcus's hand. They spoke in private for a minute. The flight attendant beside them looked nervous but respectful. Marcus stayed calm. He wasn't angry, not on the surface. But inside, something was building. Not revenge, not pride, justice. Back in their seats, Angela checked on their daughter. Little Zara was still coloring in her book. She had drawn a plane in the sky with 3 smiling stick figures: herself, her mom, and her dad. But when she looked around, she saw something wasn't right. People were staring. Some looked angry. Some looked scared. Some looked confused. She whispered, Mommy, is something bad happening? Angela kissed her forehead. No, baby, you're safe. Just some people need to learn how to be kind. Zara thought for a moment. Then she said, Why was that man yelling at Daddy? Angela's smile faded. Because sometimes people don't understand love, and they get scared of what they don't know. Zara frowned. But Daddy was nice to him. Yes, he was, Angela said. Then Zara looked across the aisle. Richard was sitting there, arms crossed, pretending to sleep, but he wasn't. He heard everything. He opened one eye. Zara looked directly at him. She didn't blink. And then, out of nowhere, she said, "Why do you hate my daddy?" The entire cabin went silent. Passengers turned their heads. Angela froze. Richard looked shocked. "What? What did you say?" he asked. Zara repeated, louder this time. "Why do you hate my daddy?" "He's a good man," Angela whispered. Zara. But it was too late. The question was out. The woman behind them, still filming, whispered, "Oh my God." A man across the aisle said, "She just called him out." And Richard, he had no words. He looked at the little girl, her innocent face full of truth. Fear, no anger, just confusion and pain. He opened his mouth to speak but nothing came out. Zara continued, "My daddy helps people. He tells the truth. He plays games with me. He makes pancakes. He holds my hand when I'm scared." Then she looked down and said quietly, "You made me scared." Angela gently pulled Zara into her arms. "It's okay, sweetie." Zara's voice was soft, but clear. "I don't like people who scare others for no reason." The silence in the cabin was heavy. No one moved. Then someone clapped. Just once, then another dot. Within seconds, half of the passengers in first class were clapping not loudly, but with meaning. For Zara, for truth, for what she just said. Even the flight attendant stopped and looked. Richard sank into his seat. He couldn't look anyone in the eye. This moment a child's question had crushed the wall he had built for years. Marcus returned to his seat, surprised by the clapping. Asked, "What happened?" Angela smiled sadly. Zara spoke up. Marcus looked at his daughter. "You okay?" Zara nodded. "I told him you're a good person." He pulled her close. "Thank you, baby. That means more than anything." Near the back of first class, the woman who filmed the earlier drama hit upload on her phone. Title, "Little Girl Destroys Racist Man with One Question. Must watch." Within minutes, the video started gaining views, hundreds, then thousands, even while the plane was still in the air. The story was flying faster than the jet itself. The flight attendant walked over to Marcus again and spoke quietly. "Sir, the captain has informed ground control. The airline's legal team has been alerted. We're documenting everything." Marcus nodded. "Thank you." Richard looked up, his voice shaking. "What does that mean?" The attendant looked at him coldly. "It means your words might finally have consequences." Richard sat back. He didn't respond. Another passenger leaned over and said to Marcus, "Sir, thank you for handling all this the way you did." Marcus nodded. "I just want peace. For my family, for everyone." But deep inside, he knew this wasn't over. Not yet. There were still more truths to uncover, still more lessons to teach. The plane flew smoothly through the sky. Clouds floated below like soft cotton, and the sun began to set, painting everything in orange and gold. But inside that plane, something powerful was building. It wasn't turbulence. It wasn't a storm. It was Carmond. It had just taken its seat. Marcus sat quietly beside Angela and little Zara, his face calm but watchful. Richard, now silent, red-faced, and shrinking in his seat, stared out the window. He hadn't said a word since Zara's innocent but powerful question, "Why do you hate my daddy?" People around him were still whispering, still giving him cold glances. His words, his actions, they had been seen, heard, filmed, shared. The video clip of him calling Marcus and his family those people was now viral. Thousands were watching. The views were growing fast, and the airline already knew. Suddenly, the cabin lights blinked. The seatbelt sign turned on. Then came a light shake turbulence. The plane began to rock gently, then a little more strongly. Some passengers gasped. A few grabbed their armrests. "Ladies and gentlemen," the captain's voice said calmly, "we are experiencing light turbulence. Please remain seated and keep your seatbelts fastened." Marcus stayed calm. He looked at Zara and gently held her hand. "It's okay, baby. Just bumps in the sky." Angela nodded. "Like when we ride over potholes." Zara smiled, feeling safe between them. But Richard, he gripped the seat tightly. His hands were sweaty. His breathing got faster. He had always acted strong. But now, as the plane shook, he was suddenly afraid. Then something else happened. A few rows back, an elderly woman clutched her chest. Her face turned pale. She began to panic. The flight attendant rushed over. "Ma'am, are you okay?" she whispered. "I can't breathe. My chest." Passengers looked around in fear. Marcus didn't hesitate. He stood up and went over quickly. "Trained," he said. "Let me help." He knelt beside the woman, spoke gently to her, checked her pulse, and helped her breathe slowly. Angela called, "Zara, stay here," and followed to assist. Marcus asked the crew, "Do you have oxygen? Ready? She may be having an anxiety attack." The attendants brought the oxygen mask. Marcus placed it carefully over the woman's face. "Deep breaths," he said softly. "You're okay. You're not alone." After a few minutes, her breathing calmed. Her face regained color. The flight crew and nearby passengers looked amazed. "Thank you, sir," one attendant said. "You really saved her." "I'm just glad she's okay," Marcus replied. Back at their seats, people began to whisper again, but this time with respect. He knew exactly what to do. He's a hero. That man saved her. And then came a voice from behind. "Is that the same man that guy called trouble earlier?" People turned and looked straight at Richard. He looked down at his lap. He had no excuse left. No power. No defense. The man he tried to humiliate had just helped save a life. And him? He had done nothing. Not even said sorry. The captain came on the speaker again. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. Special thanks to one of our passengers who stepped in to assist during a medical situation. There was a pause. Then the captain added something unusual. We also want to remind all passengers that respect, kindness, and safety are part of our values. We do not tolerate any form of discrimination. Any behavior against those values will be handled seriously. Marcus looked at Angela. She whispered, "That's because of you." He nodded slowly. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. But in his heart, he knew. Karma was finally speaking through the intercom. Richard's hands trembled. He couldn't take it anymore. He pressed the flight attendant button. Ding. A crew member came over. "I need to speak to the captain." "Richard," said The attendant looked at him. "About what, sir?" "I want to explain. I didn't mean for things to go this far." The attendant gave him a cold look. "You'll have a chance to speak when we land. The airline team is waiting." "Waiting?" Richard's voice cracked. "Yes," she said. "They've seen the video. So has our legal department." Marcus overheard the words, but didn't say anything. Angela leaned closer. "Do you think they'll really do something?" Marcus nodded. "They have to. The whole world is watching now." Zara whispered, "Is the bad man going to be in trouble?" Marcus replied gently, "He's learning a lesson, one that he needed for a long time." Zara asked, "Will he say sorry?" "I don't know," Marcus said, "but even if he doesn't, the truth is out." As the turbulence stopped and the sun dipped low, the plane grew calm again, but not everyone felt calm. Richard sat in his seat, trapped not by seatbelts or the sky but by guilt, shame, and the weight of his own actions. He looked at Marcus once, just once. Marcus looked back, not with hate, not with anger, but with quiet power. That stare said, "You tried to break us, but we're already above you." Because karma doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it whispers. Sometimes, it simply lets the world see who you really are. And on this flight, the world had seen enough. The sky outside had turned deep orange. Plane was now just an hour from landing in New York. But inside the cabin, something bigger was coming, something no one expected, the truth, and it was about to change everything. Richard sat in silence. He had tried everything to feel powerful. Again, loud words, rude looks, and cold silence. But none of it worked now. The people around him didn't look at him with fear or respect anymore. They looked at him with disgust. Every glance from the passengers said, "We saw who you are." And worse, they saw who Marcus was too. A calm, kind man, a father, a helper, a hero, and more than that, someone important. In the front cabin, a flight attendant leaned over and whispered to another, "He's the one, right? The civil aviation guy." The other nodded. "Yep, that's him. I looked it up. Marcus Johnson. I read one of his articles last year." The first said he helped pass that new rule for flight crew safety. A third attendant joined in. "The captain told me he's one of the top people on the national board. He's not just a lawyer. He helps run the system." They all looked toward Marcus with new eyes full of respect. Angela, sitting beside Marcus, glanced at her phone. The Wi-Fi was spotty, but she saw a message pop up. "Your husband is trending. That video is everywhere." She leaned over to show him. Marcus raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Already. Over 2 million views," she said quietly. He sighed. "I didn't plan for this. I just wanted peace." Angela smiled. "And because you chose peace, people are listening." In the row behind them, the woman who had filmed it all whispered to her husband, "I hope the airline makes that man apologize on camera." The husband replied, "He won't, but the internet already judged him." Then the captain's voice came on again. "Ladies and gentlemen, as we prepare for landing, we have a brief announcement. One of our passengers, Mr. Marcus Johnson, is a respected legal advisor for the Federal Civil Aviation Oversight Board. We thank him for his calm and courageous support during this flight. We also want to make clear, our airline does not tolerate any form of racism, hate, or verbal harassment. Action will be taken." The cabin filled with soft clapping. Some passengers nodded. A few looked directly at Marcus, admiring him without words. And Richard Desi's face was pale. He now knew exactly who he had messed with. Not just a man, not just a father, but a leader. A voice, a man with more power than he ever imagined. He leaned forward and whispered, "You could have told me. You could have embarrassed me right away." Marcus turned to him, voice calm as always. "I didn't need to. You embarrassed yourself." Richard shook his head. "I didn't mean for it to get this far." Marcus looked at him, steady and quiet. "You did? You just thought no one would stop you." Angela gently added, "You've probably done this before. But today, someone watched. Someone spoke up." Zara peeked over the seat and softly said, "I did." Richard turned to the little girl. Her face was innocent, but her words had been sharp and unforgettable. He opened his mouth to say something but stopped. His lips moved. But no apology came out, only silence. The flight attendants returned to their places as the plane started its descent. One of them leaned close to Marcus and said, "Sir, just so you know, airport security has been informed. A legal report is being written about this flight. Thank you, Marcus said. She added, they'll meet us at the gate. They're not just talking this time. They're serious. As the plane tilted gently and began to lower, passengers prepared for landing, but no one was thinking about baggage, no. One was worried about taxis or delays. They were all thinking about the moment. They just witnessed how a racist man tried to bully a quiet family, and how that same family responded with truth, calmness, and strength. Richard closed his eyes, but even in the darkness, he couldn't hide from reality. Every bump of the plane made him more anxious. Every glance from other passengers made him feel smaller. He remembered how powerful he used to feel in rooms, in offices, at dinners. Now, he was just a man in a seat surrounded by the truth. As the plane touched down with a soft bump, the captain's voice came on one last time. Welcome to New York. Please remain seated until we reach the gate. And again, thank you to those who showed kindness and courage today. Passengers clapped again, but this time, they weren't clapping for the landing, they were clapping for Marcus, for Angela, for Zara, and for everyone who chooses kindness over hate. Richard didn't clap. He couldn't. His hands were too heavy with guilt, with shame, with silence, because the truth had landed before the wheels did, and now, the world was waiting. The airplane slowed as it rolled across the runway. Outside the window, the city of New York waited, but inside the cabin, judgment had already arrived. Passengers sat quietly, many of them still watching Marcus. Some whispered to each other, sharing updates from their phones. Others gave small nods of respect to the man who had stayed calm through it all. But one man, Richard Grant, sat frozen. His hands were tight on the armrests. His eyes stared straight ahead. He had just learned the truth about Marcus. And now, consequences were coming. The seatbelt sign turned off. People stood up, reaching for bags. The usual chatter was missing. Instead, there was silence. Not the peaceful kind. The heavy kind. Marcus remained seated with Angela and Zara. Ready, baby? He asked. Zara smiled, holding his hand. Ready? Angela nodded. Let's go home. But before they could move, a voice came over the speaker. Mr. Marcus Johnson, please remain seated. A gate agent will board to speak with you shortly. Whispers spread across the cabin. What's happening now? Is he in trouble? No, he's the good guy. Maybe it's about the racist man. A few minutes later, the plane door opened. Two uniformed airline officials stepped in, along with an airport security officer. They didn't rush. They walked with calm, clear purpose. One of the airline agents approached Marcus. Mr. Johnson. Sir, thank you again for your cooperation today. We've reviewed the incident, and we would like a brief statement for our records. Marcus stood, respectful but firm. Of course. Angela stood with him. Zara stayed close, quiet but alert. The officer then turned not to Marcus but to Richard. Sir, the officer said firmly, we need a word with you. Richard blinked. Me. Yes. Your behavior on this flight violated airline policy and passenger safety regulations. People nearby stopped pretending to grab bags. They stared. Richard looked nervous. It was just a misunderstanding. I was expressing an opinion. The airline agent stepped forward. Your opinion included racist language, public harassment, and disturbing the peace in first class. Richard turned red. Come on, I have rights. Marcus said quietly, so do we. The security officer continued. You will be escorted off the aircraft separately. A formal report will be filed. Passengers whispered again. Good, finally, that's what he deserves. Richard looked around, but there was no one on his side now. Even the flight attendants kept their eyes away. He tried to speak. I didn't mean to, but his voice cracked, and his words didn't matter anymore. Then came the final blow. The airline agent said, your name has been flagged. You may be placed on the no-fly list for this airline. Further legal action is under review. Richard sat back down hard. You can't do that, the agent replied. We already have. And just like that, the man who thought he had the power lost everything at 30,000 feet. As the officer guided Richard down the aisle, passengers stepped back, not out of respect but out of disgust. Zara peeked over her seat. Angela whispered, don't stare, baby. But Marcus gently said, it's okay, she's watching a lesson. At the front of the plane, the security team paused. One officer turned and asked Marcus, would you like to press charges, sir? Marcus shook his head slowly. No. Let the world teach him now. Passengers began to leave the plane, but many paused near Marcus and his family. A woman said, thank you for speaking up. A man added, you handled that better than most would. Even a flight attendant, with tears in her eyes, whispered, I'll never forget this flight. Marcus simply nodded. He didn't need applause, because truth doesn't shout, it just stands. And waits, and lets the light find it at the terminal. Reporters were already waiting. The video had exploded online. News stations picked it up. Camera flashes went off. Voices called out, Mr. Johnson, can you speak to us? Sir, how do you feel after the flight? Will you file a lawsuit? Marcus looked down at Zara. You ready to be famous? Zara giggled. Only if I can have ice cream. He smiled, then turned to the cameras and said, I didn't come here today to make news. I came here with my family. But when hate spoke loudly, kindness spoke louder. And when you speak with respect, you always land higher. The crowd clapped. Even some airport staff came to shake his hand. And Richard, he stood nearby with his head down. No cameras for him. No support. Applause. Just the cold truth. The man he insulted was now respected by millions. Because that's the thing about karma. It doesn't always wait. Sometimes, it flies beside you. And lands before you do. The airport was buzzing with noise. People rushed to gates. Announcements echoed overhead. Luggage carts rolled by. But in the middle of it all, stood Marcus, Angela, and Zarek, steady and surrounded by cameras. The video from the flight had now crossed 10 million views. It was everywhere. Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, even the evening news. And the caption under every post read something like, "Man insults. Black family on flight ends up exposed by 6-year-old girl and karma." Marcus had become a symbol, not just for what he said, but for how he didn't react. Just a few feet away, Richard Grant stood with airport security. No cameras pointed at him. No one asked him for interviews. He looked smaller than ever, not because he was arrested, but because he had been seen for who he truly was. He had tried to act superior. He had used his voice to spread hate, and in return, a child's honesty, a father's silence, and a mother's strength had ended him. Marcus held Zara's hand and turned to Angela. "You okay?" Angela smiled softly. "Better now." Zara looked up. "Can we go get pancakes?" Marcus chuckled. "Pancakes it is." But just as they turned to leave, a young man stepped forward. He looked nervous, holding his phone like he wasn't sure if he should speak. "Sir," he said to Marcus, "I saw the video. I wanted to say thank you. My little brother went through something like that last year, and no one stood up for him." Marcus nodded, gently. "Then tell your brother he's not alone." One by one, more people came forward. A flight attendant, off duty, said, "You showed us how to handle hate with grace." A teenage girl whispered, "You're why I want to study law." An old man said, "I fought for civil rights. And today, I saw the torch still burning." Marcus didn't smile proudly. He just listened, grateful, quiet, because for him, this wasn't about fame. It was about something deeper, showing the world what strength really looks like. Then came a call. Marcus answered, and a familiar voice came through the phone. "Mr. Johnson, this is Director Barnes from the Federal Civil Aviation Board. I've seen the footage. I want you to know we're proud to have you on our team. We'll be reviewing this case with the airline. Policies will change. And sir, thank you for representing us with such dignity." Marcus responded simply, "Thank you, Director." Meanwhile, a news alert popped up on Angela's phone, breaking, "Man removed from plane after racial incident. Possible ban across multiple airlines under review." She showed Marcus. He nodded. "That's accountability, not revenge." Zara tilted her head. "Is the bad man going home now?" Marcus bent down and said softly, "He's not bad, but he made a very bad choice. And today, the world didn't ignore it." They left the terminal and stepped out into the cool New York air. Zara jumped up and down. "City smells funny." Angela laughed. "That's New York." Marcus took a deep breath. "It smells like justice." As they walked toward their hotel, more phones were filming them. But this time, it wasn't for drama. It was for hope. Because people saw something real. A black family, proud and peaceful. A man who didn't raise his voice, but raised the standard. A woman who stood firm with quiet strength. And a little girl who asked one brave question and changed everything. Later that night, in their hotel room, Marcus sat by the window. The city lights blinked in the distance. Zara slept peacefully on the bed, holding a small toy airplane. Angela came and sat beside him. "Tired?" she asked a little. He said, "But mostly, I'm thinking about what?" He looked out the window, about how hate flies everywhere, but so does love. And today, love flew higher. Angela leaned her head on his shoulder. "You think people will really change?" He nodded slowly. "Maybe not all at once. But someone, somewhere, will remember today. They'll speak up. They'll stay calm. They'll tell the truth." And then, softly, he added, "Sometimes, all it takes is one good landing."